Gentlemen, in any relationship, trust is the foundation. But sometimes that trust is tested when a woman's heart begins to wander. While no one wants to believe it, the truth is, a woman who cheats will often leave certain signs behind. Today, we're going to discuss these signs, not to encourage suspicion, but to help you protect your heart and honor. In every relationship, there is an unspoken rhythm, a quiet harmony that keeps two hearts moving as one when that rhythm falters. When a familiar warmth begins to cool, it is often the first whisper of something amiss. Imagine a woman who once laughed easily, who once sought your company with eager eyes and a tender smile. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, her gaze starts to drift away. The laughter grows quieter, the smiles less frequent, and the light that shone so brightly in her presence begins to dim. This is the slow turning away, the emotional distance that creeps in like a shadow across a sunlit room. It is not always loud or dramatic. Often it is a gentle retreat, a quiet pulling back of the soul. She no longer shares the stories of her day with the same enthusiasm. Conversations that once flowed like a well-loved melody become hesitant, stilted, or vanish altogether. Her attention drifts, eyes often fixed elsewhere, fingers nervously fidgeting with her phone or absent-mindedly brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. The heart is a delicate thing, and when it begins to wander, it builds walls to shield itself from the guilt of betrayal. These walls take the form of silence, distance, and a guarded spirit. A woman who allows another man's shadow to cross her thoughts will, without meaning to, place a space between herself and the one she once held close. The warmth that filled the room slowly becomes a cold breeze. In days past, our fathers and grandfathers understood the signs not through harsh words but through the quiet changes, the absence of shared moments, the loss of gentle touches, the fading sparkle in her eyes. They knew that when a woman stops seeking closeness, it is often because her heart is no longer fully present. Yet it is not always a simple story. Life's burdens, worries at work, family troubles, weariness from daily toil can all dim the spirit. But when these troubles settle alongside other subtle changes, one must look closely. The emotional withdrawal is not just fatigue, it is a retreat from intimacy itself. For the man who loves with honor, this distance feels like a wound to the soul. Questions arise unbidden. Have I failed her? Is there something I missed? But the true test of a man's character is not in despair but in courage. It is the courage to face these shadows, to ask gently, to listen deeply, to invite her back with patience, not anger, to remind her through steadfast presence and open heart of the bond that once bound two spirits as one. There is wisdom in knowing that love must be nurtured as one tends a garden. If the flowers begin to wilt, one must tend the soil. Water the roots and remove the weeds of neglect or misunderstanding. The emotional distance is a call, a plea for renewed attention and care. And yet there is also a solemn truth. Sometimes the distance is more than a cry for help. Sometimes it is the sign of a heart pulled in another direction, toward a path unknown and unshared. When efforts to rebuild the bridge of affection are met with silence or refusal, a man must protect his own heart. To endure pain in silence is not strength. It is the slow erosion of dignity. The stories of old remind us that love built on trust is the strongest fortress, but it must be guarded by both partners. When one withdraws, the fortress cracks. It is not weakness to acknowledge when a bond is breaking, it is wisdom to recognize the signs and to act with honor. Whether through honest conversation or, if necessary, the solemn acceptance of parting ways. So, when you notice the warmth fading, when her presence feels more like a shadow than a light, pay close attention, for in that gentle turning away, the story of love and loss is quietly being written, and the choice, as always, remains yours, to fight for what once was or to guard your heart with dignity and grace. There is a delicate dance between trust and secrecy in every relationship, an unspoken agreement that hearts remain open and transparent. Yet, when that balance tips, when the veil of openness begins to fray, the subtle art of concealment takes root like a creeping vine, twisting around the bonds once freely shared. It is in this quiet turning inward, this newfound secretiveness, that the shadow of unfaithfulness often first finds a foothold. Imagine the woman you know, once warm and candid, a willing keeper of her thoughts and moments. Her phone was once an open book in your presence, her messages casual, unguarded. But now a shift occurs, almost imperceptible at first. The phone is no longer left carelessly on the table, it is held close, guarded like a precious treasure. Passwords are changed without explanation. Screens are swiftly turned away as you enter the room. What once was open and free becomes locked behind walls of silence. This new newfound secrecy does not arise from mere whimsy or caprice. It is the quiet symptom of a heart divided. A woman who begins to hide her actions and shield her communications is often protecting a world that she no longer wishes to share. The thrill of concealment, the need to shield a secret from prying eyes, suggests a story unfolding beyond the gaze of her partner. Traditionally, honesty is the cornerstone of a lasting union. The simplest acts, sharing a message, answering a call, showing a smile over a conversation, are the bricks that build trust. When those acts are replaced by evasions and whispers, the foundation begins to crack. A man who has loved deeply may notice these changes as a subtle chill in the atmosphere. The questions arise slowly. Why does she take her phone to another room? Why does she guard it more closely than before? Why do her answers seem rehearsed, or sometimes deflecting? These are the small cracks where suspicion can seep in, not born of paranoia, but of a heart striving to protect itself. Yet, it is important to remember that not all secrecy is a betrayal. In the course of daily life, a woman might seek privacy for innocent reasons, personal worries, surprises planned in secret, or moments of solitude needed for reflection. But when secrecy grows in tandem with emotional distance, it becomes a thread in a darker tapestry. A wise man will approach this veil of secrecy with a steady hand and a calm heart. He will not rush to judgment, but will seek to understand, to draw forth the truth with kindness rather than accusation. Trust, after all, is earned not by suspicion, but through open dialogue and patient listening. The stories passed down through generations remind us that a guarded heart is a fragile one. When a woman hides pieces of her world, it often means she fears the consequences of revealing too much. It is the burden of guilt or the lure of a new attachment that drives this need for concealment. For the man who values honor and tradition, this sign is a call to vigilance, not in the form of prying or spying, but through honest conversation and a renewal of the bond that once made secrecy unnecessary. It is a call to ask gently and with respect why the shadows have grown longer. If the answers are unclear, or if the walls remain unbroken, then the veil of secrecy becomes more than a mystery. It becomes a warning. A woman who hides may be walking a path that leads away from the shared future once dreamed together. In this timeless dance of love and trust, the lesson remains: openness must be cherished, and secrecy understood as the symptom, not the cause, of deeper wounds. And for a man who holds his heart with dignity, knowing when to seek the light and when to protect oneself is the mark of true strength. In the quiet moments between dawn and dusk, when two hearts have once moved in tender harmony, the absence of touch is a language all its own. A woman who once sought closeness, who once found comfort and passion in the arms of her partner, may begin to withdraw from the sacred intimacy they once shared. This retreat is rarely sudden. It is a slow fading, like the gentle ebb of a river retreating from its banks. There was a time when her presence was a balm, a hand held in the dark, a brush of lips in passing, a lingering glance that spoke of love without words. But now those gestures grow scarce. The warmth of her touch is replaced by cool indifference, the eager embrace by hesitant distance. The bed that once held shared dreams feels empty in ways that words cannot capture. This withdrawal from physical affection is more than mere disinterest or fatigue. It is often a reflection of a heart divided, a soul torn between loyalty and temptation. When a woman's desires turn elsewhere, the intimacy that once united becomes strained and fragile. Her body may remain present, but her spirit has already taken flight. In the quiet traditions of old, physical closeness was regarded not just as an act of love, but as a sacred bond, a promise renewed with each shared moment. When that bond begins to fray, it is often the first sign that something deeper is amiss. The absence of touch is a silent cry, a subtle farewell. The man who notices this change may feel confusion and hurt. He may wonder if he has lost her affection, if his love is no longer enough. These feelings are natural, for the body speaks truths the heart cannot always admit. Yet it is important to look beyond the surface, to understand that physical distance often mirrors emotional distance. The reasons for this retreat can be many. Weariness from life's demands, stress, or illness may dull desire temporarily. But when the absence of affection is coupled with other signs, secrecy, emotional withdrawal, changes in behavior, it becomes a clearer signal of a wandering heart. Tradition teaches that love must be tended like a flame. When left unattended, it flickers and dims. The loss of physical closeness is often the result of neglect, miscommunication, or unresolved grievances. But it can also be the unmistakable sign of betrayal. A man of honor will not respond with anger or blame, but with patience and understanding. He will seek to rekindle the flame through kindness, shared moments, and gentle reminders of the love once kindled. He will listen to the quiet whispers of her heart, hoping to heal the wounds before they grow too deep. Yet there comes a time when patience must meet truth. If the coldness persists, if the touch never returns, it may be that her heart belongs elsewhere. In that painful moment, a man must protect his dignity and recognize the signs before the bond is broken beyond repair. The absence of physical affection is not merely about desire, it is about connection, trust, and respect. When those pillars crumble, so too does the foundation of love. Remember the wisdom of the past. A relationship thrives not just on words, but on the language of touch, a language that speaks louder than any promise, deeper than any vow. There is a certain grace in the way a woman carries herself when her heart is full, a quiet confidence, a natural beauty that shines from within. But when her heart begins to stray, a transformation often takes hold, subtle yet unmistakable. She suddenly becomes more concerned with her appearance, as if trying to capture the attention that once belonged solely to her partner. It is not vanity alone that drives this change, but a restless desire to be noticed anew, to reclaim a sense of admiration and allure that may have faded in the familiar rhythms of home. The carefully chosen dress, the newfound interest in makeup, the hours spent perfecting a hairstyle, all these gestures speak a language of longing and sometimes a secret hope. Traditionally, a woman's beauty was a reflection not just of herself, but of her union with the man she loved. It was a sign of pride and respect for the relationship they shared. When that beauty suddenly shifts focus, no longer for the partner's eyes alone, but for others, it can be a sign that her affections are drifting. This change is often accompanied by a shift in behavior. She may spend more time away from home, explaining late nights or social gatherings with vague stories. There is a new lightness in her step, a sparkle in her eye that was once reserved for her beloved. These are not mere coincidences, but clues in the story of a heart that is no longer fully present. For the man who observes this transformation, it can be a source of unease. He may recall the days when his praise was enough to make her smile, when a simple compliment from him was her greatest joy. Now he finds himself competing with shadows and whispers, uncertain and searching for answers. The wisdom of our ancestors teaches us to pay attention to such changes, not out of suspicion, but out of care. When a woman's outward transformation is sudden and unexplained, it often signals a deeper unrest. It is a silent call for something missing, a yearning that cannot be fulfilled within the current bounds of the relationship. Yet it is important to remember that changes in appearance are not always signs of betrayal. A woman may choose to reinvent herself for many reasons: new confidence, a fresh start, or simply the desire to embrace life's seasons. But when this outward shift is paired with secrecy, emotional distance, and a decline in intimacy, it becomes part of a larger picture. A man of honor will meet this sign not with accusations, but with gentle inquiry. He will seek to understand the reasons behind the change, to open a dialogue where fears and hopes can be shared. It is through such conversations that wounds can be healed and trust restored. But if the answers remain elusive and the transformation continues to widen the gap between them, it may be a sign that her heart has begun to wander elsewhere. And in that realization lies both sorrow and strength, the strength to face reality with dignity and the courage to protect one's own honor. The story of love is not always one of forever. Sometimes it is a lesson in knowing when to hold on and when to let go. And often, the changes we see on the surface tell us more than words ever could. There is a fire that burns quietly beneath the surface of every loving relationship, a steady warmth that tempers patience and fuels understanding. But when that fire flickers and dims, it often reveals itself in the form of sudden defensiveness and quick anger, a storm where once there was calm. Imagine the woman who once greeted your concerns with gentle words and open heart, now responding with sharpness or cold dismissal. Questions asked with love are met with guarded walls, accusations spark outrage, and a simple conversation feels like walking on fragile ice. This change is not born of cruelty, but of fear. Fear of being discovered, of guilt breaking free from its cage. Defensiveness is often the mask of a heart wrestling with secrets. When a woman begins to cheat, the weight of betrayal sits heavily on her conscience. To protect herself from the pain of exposure, she becomes quick to anger, lashing out before you can get too close. It is a shield, a desperate attempt to keep the truth hidden behind a veil of denial. In the traditional view, patience and honesty were the pillars on which a relationship stood firm. But when suspicion rises, it tests the strength of these pillars. The man who sees this change in his partner's demeanor must tread carefully, with a steady voice and unwavering respect. Responding to anger with anger only fans the flames, while calm and clear concern can sometimes coax the truth to the surface. This defensiveness often comes hand in hand with other signs: the emotional distance, the secrecy, the fading intimacy. It is a pattern, a story told not in words, but in actions and reactions. For a man rooted in honor, this moment is a crossroads. He can choose to confront with harshness or to seek understanding through patience. He can choose to build bridges with kindness or walls with suspicion. The wisdom passed down through generations reminds us that love is not about winning arguments, but about seeking truth with compassion. When defensiveness rises, it is often a silent plea for mercy, a cry from a heart caught between guilt and fear. If repeated attempts at gentle inquiry are met with anger and silence, it may be time to recognize that the trust once shared is breaking. And though it is a bitter truth, it is better faced with dignity than ignored in hope. The stories of old teach us that love demands courage, courage to ask, courage to listen, and courage to accept what is revealed. Defensiveness is a sign that the heart is burdened, and it calls for a man to stand firm, not in accusation, but in honest strength. In the end, knowing when to hold on and when to protect oneself is the mark of a man who honors his heart and the memories of a love once shared. In every relationship, the signs of a drifting heart are subtle but clear to those who choose to see with patience and honor. A woman who cheats often leaves traces not in grand gestures, but in quiet changes, a fading touch, a guarded secret, a distant gaze. The wisdom of the past reminds us to listen closely, to act with dignity, and to protect our own hearts without bitterness. True strength lies not in suspicion, but in the courage to seek truth and hold fast to self-respect. Thank you for watching and taking this time to reflect with me. If this message resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more honest, thoughtful content. Remember, the greatest love begins with respect, both for others and yourself. Until next time, take care and walk with honor.